So I was schooled my first day out of college in the approaches and methods and thinking of the late Gary Rumler, who was a business partner of the late Tom Gilbert, and also of Bob Mager and of Joe Harless. And I actually met and knew three of the four of these people very well. I didn't know Gilbert very well, but Gilbert and Rumler had workshop materials that I was given in my first week on the job back in 1979. They were from 1972 because they've been practicing this from the 60s on. And that was to look at the outputs, or what Gilbert called accomplishments, but that doesn't translate very well to my clients. So I always focused on what are the outputs that are produced. And those outputs are inputs downstream, either to an external customer or to an internal customer. But what is that output? What am I producing that I'm handing off to somebody or using for my next steps of the process? So beginning with the end in mind, what is the output? And then who are the stakeholders for that output? There's the downstream customer for sure, but there could be regulators who are concerned about that output. There could be the people that are concerned with safety in the organization. Our management is concerned with that. Our shareholders are concerned with that. Are we spending $10 to produce a $9 output? That's still good. You're losing $1 every time. And so there are various stakeholders for the output itself. And then there's the process that produces that. There's the human in the process. There's the infrastructure of the process. The human has knowledge of the skills that they need. They need maybe physical, intellectual, psychological capabilities. They need values, perhaps. And do we have the right person in that process? And do we have the process fully enabled? Does it have the right data, tools, and equipment, finances? Is the culture and consequence system in tune with what we're trying to do? So it can get quite complex, but that's where we as instructional systems designer types or learning experience designers, when we look at the performance situation and if we're addressing a problem, we need to be able to dissect that performance situation, the performance context, to determine whether or not all the right pieces are in place. And if it's not, it's a gap. And how do we solve that gap? But if we're addressing new hires, then yeah, we don't need to necessarily worry so much about that because new hires need to be trained. But if it's a problem that's driving the client's request, we need to understand, what's really going on. And will addressing knowledge and skills solve the problem, address the opportunity appropriately? It may not. And therefore, we need to help steer our clients to a better path, a more appropriate intervention. Perhaps they simply need to re-engineer their process, or they need to make sure that the data that people are working with is current, or that the tools that they use are efficient and effective. So there's many aspects to performance, and we get called in because there's a problem, and we're asked to address that. And one of my biases is that we shouldn't push back on the request. We shouldn't challenge it. We should accept it. We should clarify the request, and we should conduct analysis so that we can generate the analysis data that will inform the client as to whether or not addressing knowledge and skills is going to address their problem adequately. And sometimes it will, and sometimes, most of the time, most likely it won't, unless, of course, it's a new hire situation where people need to be trained to do their jobs.